Well, hello, lovely listeners. Today I have the great honor, and it is a great honor. I've talked about these guys on previous podcasts, on videos that I've done. They've been in my world since really 2018 when I saw them at an event in Texas. And yeah, me and the rest of the room totally blown away. So we have the wonderful Guy and Ilan Ferdman, two brothers from the States. Originally New York State. Now Ilan is in Florida and Guy is in the hippie San Diego. Yeah. And yeah, I tried to get them on a few months ago, but they're so busy, as you can imagine. And just to give some context, I haven't even given you any context, guys. So Guy and Ilan now run their own very successful coaching company called Satori Prime. I'm very passionate about their energy work, energy healing, deep energy healing, something that I'm experiencing myself right now as well, which is phenomenal. And but you know, they've come from various different things in their backgrounds to get them to where they've got to now. So I would love you guys, whoever wants to go first, to give us a little bit of your backstory and what led you up to where you've got to now. And welcome, Guy and Ilan.
Thank you.
Great to be here, Mel. Thanks for having us.
And Ilan already knows he's going to go first because we've set that tone now for like 12 straight years.
Maybe we mix it up today. It was so funny. Guy was sharing a story the other day about someone asked him how he got into doing what he's doing, and he was like, depression. And I was like,
I took a Muay Thai class for the first time. It's like I think I could be saying this so ignorantly. I have no idea, like an Asian style kickboxing. And the kid, and so I was like doing push-ups on the floor. I'd mentioned I was a coach. He was like, I could see he was interested. He's like, how'd you get into all this? I'm like, oh, depression. And then I said, how'd you get into this? He goes, depression. I said, fair enough.
Right.
Yeah. No, but it is kind of true when he said it. Like our story down this path of personal development really started with Guy going through some really difficult times, getting to a place where he just really, he couldn't even say no anymore to asking, like needing help. It was obvious that he needed to get support, and he did a program, contacted me right afterwards, was like, hey, I'd love for you to do this thing. I had no idea what I was signing up for. And I think both of our worlds got just blown wide open, and we really loved it. Like, we love the whole mindset world and understanding what's happening, and that there's this voice in your head. And we used to joke around that every time we did a course, it was like someone would open up this new playground in our mind, and we get to like go into the sandbox and play. And then we just started coaching, not because we needed money or anything like that. It was just additional training for us. We loved it. And we were coaching for free.
This was with Landmark, right?
Yeah, through Landmark. Yeah. We did that for
10 years, probably.
I want to say about, like eight to 10 years. Yeah, we were doing all that stuff for free. And then in 2010, Guy and I were working together in commercial real estate, and we lost everything. Obviously the real estate world collapsed in 2008. We made it work for another 2 years, and then we kind of bit the bullet like everybody else. And at that point, both of us had to figure out what's next. So I went down one path, the Guy went down another path. And at some point, I think it was like 4 to 6 months into Guy's like online journey, he basically messaged me, was like, hey, listen, how would you feel about like doing this together? And that's kind of the impetus of Satori Prime and how it started. We've taken a lot of different turns during the almost 12 years that we've been in business. But I think ultimately Guy and I have always and will always be people that love to work on themselves and then share that in a way with others, taking what we find to be the most practical, easy to follow, useful things that have worked in our lives, whether it's in health, whether it's in relationships, whether it's around our finances, and then just sharing those with others. And I think we kind of have a gift for that.
Just a quick question before Guy speaks. You said about the online world. I know that Guy found SFM as it was back in the day, and people that have listened to previous episodes, I've mentioned SFM a few times because that's where I joined back in 2017. So how did you transition from the affiliate marketing side of it into a coaching business, or did you always have the two running anyway?
No.
Well, so I started, it was Carbon Copy Pro in 2011. It was January 2011. I was sure I was going to become a millionaire in 5 months. I actually wrote myself $1 million check for May of that year. They were just about to launch a partnership with a fairly famous person. He was like a 16-time New York Times bestseller, and the whole thing flopped. So I got into the company at like its crescendo, because I remember the first event I went to was in Phoenix, and there was like 1,500 people there. If you could just imagine, right? Like you've been to events with a few hundred, 1,500 people in a room, like massive room. I had so little money that I only had enough money to fly to Phoenix for one day of the event. Like I couldn't actually afford 2 days at the hotel. So I bought the one day, and the second day they had the replays, and it was like $99 just to get the replays. And that was like a stretch for me to get it. But funny enough, having those replays is what I told Ilan to go watch. I said, hey, I'm like, go watch these replays. You're not going to know what these people are talking about. I'm like, but what I want you to see is that the people on stage are talking about personal development, which shocked me at the time. I was like, what? Personal development in a business setting? This doesn't make any sense. They were like, it was a lot of like landmark-ish talking. And I also recognized that what they were saying was like 1/10, 1/20th of the knowledge and wisdom that Ilan and I had. I'm like, so if that's what people who are making millions of dollars are saying on stage, I'm like, what could we do? You know, like, please go watch. And so that's what hooked Ilan into doing this. So it's funny, if I hadn't gone to that event, if I hadn't spent that extra little $100 that was like $1 million to me at that time, Ilan wouldn't be here. And I basically told him from day one, I'm like, I don't know. Here's the thing, like I've always watched him win at everything he ever tried. So I was sure that if he joined the company, we'd get there a lot faster, which is the ironic part, because when he came in, I knew he was going to be terrible at it. And I told him, I'll still carry you on my back. Like I'll get us there. I'll do the whole thing, whatever it is. But I knew that just having his energy around would be a big deal. And weirdly enough, Ilan was always the leader in everything that we had done. I was always very happy to be in the shadows and not take any credit and those kind of things. And suddenly I was put into a leadership role, and Ilan was following me, which up until that point in our lives, 27 years, was unknown to me completely, like to be at the helm. So it like really changed our dynamic a little bit, and brought out a lot more of my genius and my leadership. And then, so we did that for a while, and we found, struggles. We had people steal money from us, and when we couldn't afford it, some higher ups. I mean, it was really crazy stuff that happened to us really early on. But we had done that for a few years. We found some pretty good success with the company, enough that we could see like a light at the end of the tunnel for building a good life. And then I think maybe it was 2015 or 2016, we just put it out there that we were going to do an independent coaching. Like we've been coaching in marketing and sales, business development at that time, and had kind of had side programs, offshoots with people in SFM. But then we're like, you know what? We didn't come here for this. That was the reality. Like we didn't come to show people how to build landing pages and make videos, and that was all well and good. But we didn't come here for that. Like we actually knew, like the first reason I literally wanted to learn how to build anything online was I wanted to share what I had learned in personal development space. And I was clear about that from day one. And so here we are like 4 or 5 years in, and we're still not really doing that. And it just started building this, like, you're really not doing what you came here for. The money's fine, blah, blah, blah. And again, at that time we're doing, we're spending like $150,000 of, in ads every single month on Facebook. Like that's how we scaled it basically to like 150 grand. So we're doing, pretty good in the company. And we set all that aside. We took all the income that we had. We found this incredible woman who was like a really good copywriter. And if anybody knows Lolita, she's amazing at her craft. Gave her a bunch of money, put a bunch of money here. And we would just like exited the affiliate marketing space. And we're like, okay, we're just going to do this. And we had been kind of coaching, charging like a little bit of money to a small group, like a test group. And we weren't even sure what we were doing. They would just show up every week, and we would just kind of spit game. And weirdly enough, Mel will know this, but like the program we just re-recorded, that coaching was still from that beta thing that we had no idea what we were doing with at the time. That's why I was like felt incongruent now. So long story short, we were sure that we would just like quickly transition between our affiliate company and this coaching thing that we were doing, and like all these followers would come and the pigeons would come out of the sky and millions of dollars would fall out. And it has been anything but that, because what we didn't realize at the time, we had been like, oh, we've been in business for 5-6 years, like let's jettison and create the next thing. We never looked at it as we're literally hitting the reset button and starting at day zero all over again. And the reality is, like looking back at it now, so it's been what, this will be 6 years, right? Is that true?
6 years, yeah.
Yeah, it literally feels like we've taken that whole ride all over again. It's like we started the company from scratch, had to make all the mistakes, lose all the money, like all the things that we just didn't know. And now it feels like we're getting that traction again, right around that 6-year mark. And I'll just say this for anyone in entrepreneurship, because I get to be a lot of, in my little hippie culture here in San Diego, part of what makes it hippie is that there's no industry out here. There's only biotech. So if you're not in biotech, there's like no career opportunities in San Diego of any kind. So there is a huge entrepreneurial community out here. And so I'm around entrepreneurs all the time. And when I talk to anybody, they're like, yeah, 10 years for an overnight success, 10 years for an overnight success. Like that's the reality that most people don't really take into consideration when they want to do something in their life. They want it to be tomorrow. I don't think you start getting traction until you're 5, 6, or 7. And then you don't really start getting mastery until 7, 8, or 9, and really getting to where you want to get to. So whatever it is that people really want to do with their lives, the investment of time is much, much longer than people think. I think people mostly overestimate what they can do in a year. They generally underestimate what they can do in 10, though.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the affiliate marketing stopped, the coaching started, and then I remember, was it 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe longer than that, where you did another reset in terms of where the coaching was going. How long ago was that?
That was right at COVID. So
right,
COVID hit, and business, for us, maybe for some people did not, but for us came to a screeching halt. And the clients that we had stayed with us, but as far as like anyone new coming through the door, that just kind of stopped. And we were trying different things for like about a month and a half. And then the guy said, hey, listen, nothing that we're doing is working. How do you feel about taking a sabbatical? And we were like, listen, if there's ever going to be a time to take a sabbatical, now's the time to take a sabbatical. So we said we were going to do a month, no work, no answering emails, shutting down all the programs. Like, we don't talk about work. We don't think about work. And we spent that month just meditating and doing different practices for 6 to 8 hours a day, sometimes together, sometimes separate. And all these incredible things started to happen. Like all these magical things in our business started to happen. And we ended up extending it to 6 weeks. And at week 7, we really started to like brainstorm. And all that you see now that is Satori Prime basically was birthed in that time. We like scrapped everything that we did. Somehow all these like this whole plan and all these products and the ascension model and everything got created from that. And that's what we've been doing since.
So obviously your coaching has evolved over the years, and it's evolved along with your own personal and spiritual growth. So it would be great for the listeners and viewers to understand what it is now that you do and how you sort of got to that, because what you guys do and the community that you've built is pretty unique. There isn't, we don't really, I'm starting to see a bit more of it. I'm starting to see the buzzwords, and hear things. And a lot of people now will talk about the universe and energy, whereas even 2 years ago, that wasn't happening.
Totally.
So do you want to talk about the real work that you're doing now and sort of what led you to want to do that?
Sure. I think there's a lot of layers to what we do. And depending, like when people come to our 2-day live event, they get a really big idea of what we do. And I can tell you, when we take down to Colombia and we work people with ayahuasca, then it's like I feel like that's when people get the full reveal of really what it is, the breadth of the work that we're doing. So I think you're right. There's been a shift recently in the last few years in the industry where I start hearing more people talk about, and it started with like shadow work, then it became like inner child work. Now I'm hearing more like things like nervous system repair, and those are tells me it's a really good signal to me that the industry is focusing on what's really important, which is healing work. There's been a pragmatism in the personal development world that it's all been about performance, and that's such a Western minded thing to do, right? Like take these spiritual things and like let's perform better, let's like let's make more money out of it, you know, and that's fine, those are okay things, but at the end of the day, like what good is the money if you feel terrible inside? If it's just a band-aid for parts inside that feel broken's a harsh word, but like not met, unloving, and you're just re-traumatized. Nothing's changed since your childhood. It's like you can't really enjoy anything around you. You don't really have authentic connection with people, and you're popping pills and you're doing all those things. And so for us, like Ilan said, we've been around the landmark world, linguistics, mindset, psychology, human development for like 15 years at that point. And I remember thinking, I'm like, look, we're doing great work with people. Like people have paid us handsomely. I see massive improvements in their life. I'm like, but the reality was for me, I'm like, when I look inside of my system after 15 years, I'm the same scared little boy. I have the same fears. I have the same struggles. I'm still getting angry at the same things. I'm still this at the same things. I'm like, and while I can see what I'm doing, I can't compel myself to stop these things that are creating negative patterns in my life. And I'm like, this is really frustrating. And again, I've been doing like plant medicine work at that point in time for like 4 or 5 years, lots of different things. And I was like, look, if Ilan and I have spent $1 million and well over 10,000 hours of coaching and being coached and stuff like that, and we're still frustrated, what chances anybody else have? What chances a weekend warrior have? Like that kind of thing. And I think for us, that was a little bit of a shift. We're like, there's got to be a missing piece here, something else that we haven't quite seen. And then I went through like severe heartbreak in 2017, like in sensationalized heartbreak. Like it put me in the ground for like a good 10 months. Like I woke up into just like a gray reality every single day. And I met my wife right after that started. We were also coaching with Marcy Locke right at that same time. And Marcy began to kind of introduce this idea of the femininity to us. We were very masculine in our approach to how we did everything. We talked to everyone like we're the father and they're the child that needs to listen kind of approach to coaching. And that worked to some degree. But at that time, my wife was like, you should go see this guy that I've been working with. Okay, let's go see this guy. So I first time, and this is Andrew, who is my teacher now for 6 years. And the first time I go see Andrew, I pull up and he's not there. He's just not, he's a no-show to our first healing session, so to speak. I don't even know what I'm doing. Ever, just so you guys know, I have done so much weird stuff. I have met so many interesting, weird.
I found that out recently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, say no more. But like, I'll show, I would get sent to like random homes. I would meet like a African shaman who would just be sitting there, like shaking bones and like throwing it on the ground and like telling me everything about my life, and like weirdly accurate, like fantastically accurate. All these like shamanic mysticism that exists all over the world that we don't get exposed to. And when you're with it, you're like, wow, this is insane. I remember I showed up to one woman's house. She couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. And she had this like living room filled with a million tchotchkes that nobody needs to have, like hoarding. But in the middle of the room is this perfect bed with 7 of the biggest crystals you've ever seen in your entire life. I mean, like as big as your head. And they're just pointed at the different chakra systems. Lay down. I pass out for 2 hours. I don't even know what she did to me. She could have made out with me. I could have gotten raped that day. I have no idea what happened, right? But she's doing her angel stuff. I wake up and like I have so many of these weird mystical experiences from even before I was aware of developmental work. Like in my teenage years, this kind of stuff was happening too. So for whatever reason, that's my path. And I go see Andrew and he doesn't show up, and I'm like, landmark integrity time. I'm so angry. Like, I don't even want to talk to this individual anymore. And Mandy calls him, and it just ended up being a mismatch on our calendar for some reason. Like the software literally created the problem. So he said, he's like, hey, look, instead of coming to me, I'll come to you. I'll come to your house on this date. And I sat with him, and he did something that I had no explanation for. It was beyond my comprehension. He clearly could feel exactly what was happening in my system. Like as it was occurring, he would ask me, and he was saying things that I'm like, he doesn't even know what's going on in my life. This person doesn't even know what's true in my life. I never felt that met before. I never felt that seen before. I never felt someone connected with my system before. I was like, what the fuck is happening here? And so that was like another, whoa, okay, this is a whole different type of thing happening here. And I worked with him for a while, right? Maybe like 6 months before I introduced you to him, Ilan. I don't quite remember.
6 months, yeah.
Something like that. And after a while, I was like, hey, I'm like, I think me and my brother would really enjoy working with you more long term. We made him create his whole contract at the time. Like now it just seems so ridiculous that we had him do those things, but like we were like ultra professional, and he's not on that plane of existence at all. So for him to even put
we brought him there,
not
kicking and screaming.
Yeah, but like that has happened, and that was this beginning to understanding that there is this world beneath the world that we can see and perceive with our five senses. There is a energetic, I mean, clearly we all kind of intuitively know it, but when we talk about it, even this, like a few years ago, you say it would sound woo-woo, and I'm like, this is not woo-woo, this is science. Like there's energy in the world. Clearly, there's consciousness in the world. Clearly, we have no education on this. And so for now, the last 6, 7-ish years, Ilan and I have been very intensely training ourselves to get into these extremely what might be called higher consciousness states, but essentially it's weird actually that we call it that. It's higher consciousness states to notice more subtler energies in our reality. And energies within your body and how things are actually feeling. And just to kind of put a cap on this, what we realized by doing this work is that the landmarky personal development type work is really all about managing and coping the way that your mind is working. But you never quite get liberated and free doing that work. It does increase your performance. It certainly increases your awareness. It helps you repair through communication, things in your relationships. That's all well and good, and it's amazing for that. However, what your mind is really responding to is stimulus inside the body, very subtle stimulus inside the body. And this is not something that you can really notice until you start getting very intimate with meditation and even certain types of meditation. And so when you realize that, you realize the impetus of all your issues in your life and the reason your mind is so reactive to everything is because there's this tension in the body. And what people should really be asking themselves is, well, how do you unburden yourself from that inner tension? Because then the mind unburdens itself of its reactive state. And so that's what we do today. Just like Andrew did for me, where he can track me and read me and know what's going on in my body, Ilan and I have now trained ourselves to do that as well. And so when people are around us, as wild as this might sound, is we can actually feel what's happening in your energetic body, in your nervous system in real time. And this is not a special thing, P.S. This is something that all of humanity could be doing with just a little bit of training, and something that children do very naturally, and they're extremely attuned to energies, but we kind of grow out of it, so to speak, as an adult, because we become very defensive within our ego structure, and we start looking at the world as very mechanical. And that's, I think, something that really gets to change in our society over these next few decades as people become much more energetically attuned beings.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And ultimately, your journey is becoming lots of people's journeys, mine included, which is amazing. For the benefit of the listeners and the viewers, you talk about being able to track energy, and we've talked about deep healing, but what does that actually mean? So if somebody's sat there listening and thinking, oh, this sounds interesting, I've never been able to crack whatever it is, I've always felt this block, or I've always had this, or I've always had that. How does being able to track somebody's energy allow them to heal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our body is constantly responding to outside inputs and impulses. So when mom says that thing, or when your partner does that thing, there's an energetic exchange. When most people are doing mindset work, right, we're dealing with, which is very helpful, by the way, what we're dealing with is like my mind has an opinion about what mom said or what my partner did or whatever it is. And what we're rolling back is like, okay, why did my mind respond in that way? Right? They said that thing. My mind made up this story about that person, about the situation, and I'm now responding to that. And so we find that, we might shut down. We might respond angrily. We might respond, in whatever way. And then what talk therapy and mindset work does is it helps you understand that this part that's talking to you is responding to this impulse, and that thing is not actually happening now. It happened when you were like 3-4 years old. And because you created this kind of story back then, this person's kind of replicating that. And so people deal with it from the mind place. And we did that for 15 plus years. We got incredibly good at that. We could help people reframe and like shift things and all that stuff. What we noticed though was that it didn't matter how much of that you did and how much you worked on yourself, the thing would keep showing up over and over and over again. Like it never went away. You just got really good at being able to manage it. And then something happened and like you couldn't manage it in this situation.
Yeah.
So after doing this work for 15 years, and Guy and I started when we were really young. We were, I think I was 21, Guy was 19. So, you imagine like 15 years later, I'm only 35, 36 at this time. And I've gone back to this memory when I was 3 years old, like at least 1,000 times. Trying to see it from this way and this way. Oh, I'm this way. And I'm thinking to myself, I was like, okay, I'm going to be alive like well into my hundreds. If I have to keep doing this for the next 70 years and keep reliving this thing, like it doesn't make sense to me. There has to be a way where we can actually remove the stuff, like the stuff that's getting triggered all the time without having to understand it or manage it. Like there's got to be something else. That kicked us off on this whole other journey.
So talk about what the energetics does, because that was kind of the big.
So basically what we realized is when that impulse happens, the mind stuff, like the mind chatter, I want you to imagine is like 10 steps up on the ladder. Okay. And what you're dealing with is already like the volcanic eruption of the circumstance, and then trying to manage it like at level 10 or 9, something like that. But something's happening at level 1 and 2, and that is happening inside the body. So before the mind gets a hold and starts yelling at you, there's something that happens. It might be like a pinch in the heart or a twist in the solar plex or a squeezing in the stomach. And your mind is actually responding first to that contraction or pinching or poking, whatever it is, in the body. So that's the thing that's happening first. The mind looks down because that's the thing that happened when you were 3 or 4 years old, right? Like that, people say like the issues are in the tissues, right? And like there's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score. The body, just like the mind is a supercomputer, the body also has stored everything inside. And so when we sat with someone like Andrew, or now people sit with someone like us, is we're able to actually feel what is happening in your system. So when someone shares a story in talk therapy, right, you're listening for the words, you might listen for the emotion behind the words or the fear behind it or whatever it is. What we're able to do is we're able to go like down to the core part of it, which is like, oh, when you start sharing the story, can you notice that your solar plexus are really like twisting? And what happens is with awareness, and these are the practices that we teach people, with awareness together, we can actually sit with someone and allow for this bind, contraction, whatever you want to call it, to actually be witnessed. And what happens is it just starts to melt away. It like releases.
Because shoelace untying itself.
And so now the next time you're in that same circumstance, mom will say the thing, the partner will do the thing, whatever it is, that same frequency and energy is coming in to hit your body. but that part in the body is no longer there to be hit. Like we've undone that piece. And so now what happens is this energy just moves right through you without hitting any of that distortion or any of that discomfort inside. And so the mind doesn't have to look down and go, holy shit, like it's happening again. We got to protect ourselves, da, da, da. Like nothing happens. And so you'll be in the same interaction, waiting for the response of the mind, waiting for you to like take the bait and do the thing, but nothing happens because you've removed that program from your nervous system. And so when we track people, we're actually able to highlight for them those aspects at the most basic level of the response, and then undo that so that they can liberate from that once and for all. There's no more like managing. There's no more trying to figure out how to deal with this. It's just gone.
Thank you for that.
Can I just add one more thing? So we use the word attunement a lot. And if you think about like two tuning forks, right? When one is next to the other and you ping it, this one's gonna ring also. So it's like the system wants to retune itself all the time towards health and well-being, towards neutrality. The reason it doesn't do that is because we constantly are playing, managing, meddling with what's happening in our body. I want to just remind everybody here that when you cut your finger, or when a woman gets pregnant, or someone breaks a bone, there's no input that's necessary on your part, mentally, emotionally, physically, for your body to correct itself. There's an intelligence that does all that for you. Millions of years of evolution have figured out the best, most efficient way to bring that back to its whole state. So if you use that metaphor, or if you use that analogy, and you think, why wouldn't that be true for our emotional state? Why wouldn't that be true for anything? Your conversations around money, your certain relationships that you have. The system is essentially self-correcting. If you look at it at the macro level, like everywhere you look in nature, it's just trying to get itself in balance. Like even as we, whether you believe it or not, are creating more greenhouse gases and there's a warming effect on the planet, what the planet is doing is not harming. It's literally trying to self-correct the environment back to a more neutral state, right? And it's going through its fluctuations to do that. Our bodies are exactly the same way. What we got to learn how to do is get the hell out of the way so that the body can do what it wants to do. And how we get out of the way is that we need the mind to stop impeding so much on what's happening. We need to stop having so much opinions about how it's going. But in order to do that, we got to bring the body into a restful state, right? Whether you choose to do hypnosis or whatever it is, even in personal development, the only times that breakthroughs really take hold for people is when they're fully relaxed. There's an intelligence that turns on in our body in a way that the body can attune itself when it downregulates the nervous system. And so the primary thing we want to teach people in the onset is how to regulate your own nervous system. Now, this might be a foreign concept to some people. It's like, wow, how do I control my own nervous system? Not so much control as let your nervous system do what it naturally wants to do without putting pressure on it to do something else, right? And this is something we were all supposed to learn, by the way, from our parents, who were also supposed to have healthy nervous systems that were downregulated and grounded, but they weren't. And so it's important to remember that human beings are certainly built for stress. There is healthy stress in this world, without a doubt. But human beings are built for acute stress. They're built for the lion's coming at me, pump the adrenaline, let's run, right? Let's get out of here. Or whatever, you got to turn on, something to be a high performer for a short period of time. That's what human beings biologically are built for. But when you take it out to chronic stress, the biology does not work that way at all. It literally will melt it down. It'll break it down. And that's often what we see in society, is that we've built structures that are creating an extraordinary amount of stress for people, be it financial or health or chemical or whatever it might be, right? And so we want to give ourselves at least an opportunity to get into a regular state of relaxation in our body, so our body can go through its process of intelligence. But those things can't happen. Now, I think what happens for a lot of people is when they begin to slow down, relax, meditate, they start feeling emotions that they're normally moving too fast to feel, sensations in their body that they're moving too fast to feel. But that's the point. The way the system self-corrects is the way it goes in is the way it comes out. Like a woman, we had an event this past weekend, and a woman said, it felt like you guys were pulling a dagger out of me. Like that's how she described the metaphor. I said, yeah, but guess what? The dagger had to come out the same way the dagger went in. You can't push it through, right? It's not going to go. We can't wiggle it around. We can't sit around talking about how to get the dagger out. We can't do any of those things. We can't put a flamethrower on it and try to melt it down. Like none of that is going to work. The only thing to do is to pull it out. So that's, I think, where people find resistance, is that they're like, oh, this is too uncomfortable. But that's the point. We create an environment and a type of connection between people energetically so that they finally feel like they have the resource and confidence to sit with this discomfort. And that's the reality. The way that trauma goes in is the way trauma comes out. And it's like learning that resiliency to sit with it and having the courage to do that is the healing process.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think like Ilan touched on it earlier about the parts and the 3-year-old. It's the 3-year-old responding. It's not the 33-year-old or whatever. And most people don't even get that now, you know, never mind the energy work. There's a lot of people that still believe that's just who they are, you know, it's their personality, or it's genetic, or it's because of their situation when they were growing up, or, you know, or well, it is in a way, but they don't realize it's parts, do they? They think it's their whole person, and they just think, well, this is me till the day I die, but that's just simply not true.
Yeah. And the way to test that, which is very simple, is, are you that way all the time? Right? So it's like, I get angry. Well, are you angry? Like, or do you have moments where anger takes over? Are you sad all the time? Or do you have moments where you're sad? Are you anxious? Or you have moments when you're anxious, right? It's not you. It's this part inside of you. And there's these hundreds of parts. This part inside of you gets activated in certain moments. And what people get stuck and why they think it's them is this part literally hijacks you and takes you on a ride. We call it like, it takes you on this bus ride. And then at some point you're like, I'm done. And you get off the bus, right? And then you're kind of like, you find your way back. So the more you can relate to your experience as, it's not me, it's this part activating, and you can kind of almost like create the separation, you can now observe the part doing what the part does. And the part knows how to do that thing and that thing only. So it's doing it perfectly. And it does it perfectly every single time, because that's the program, right? What we can control, or what we can do when we do this work, is these parts get activated at the bottom line, like the most basic level, is when the nervous system doesn't feel safe. So when we go into that parasympathetic, when we go into like the fight, flight, freeze response, there's a certain way that your specific body is protecting itself. These things come online to protect you, because they truly believe that if you felt this thing fully through, like, you're going to die. Mm. It's that deep of a feeling. And so it makes sense why they come online. But when you can meet the part that wants to protect you, and you can find the little one underneath that it's trying to protect, the little hurt or little hurt boy or girl, what we're doing is, in essence, is we're helping those parts, the young ones, mature, right? Like, the world to a 3-year-old is much more scary than to a 33-year-old. And so you'd imagine that there's different protection mechanisms that are needed for a 3-year-old than a 33-year-old. Think about like your kids, you know, when your kids are riding a bike or walking down the street, like, you're hyper vigilant about, oh my God, stop at the corner, you know, like, hold my hand when you're crossing, right? It's very natural. You're not doing that with your 33-year-old or even 16-year-old, right? But that's what's happening inside. So as we help these young ones mature, the protection mechanisms just don't need to be so hyper vigilant, and you're not like reacting constantly in this hyper vigilant state. And so you're actually stabilizing more and more and more these feelings of safety and well-being. And the reason people have crazy, chaotic, stressful, overworked, overwhelmed lives is because they're in a constant state of like, because internally there's just this, like, when Guy and I sit with certain people, there's this buzz that they will have in their system that's like this. It's like constantly. And then we sit with them for 10 minutes and we're like, we help them just down regulate. I'm like, how do you feel now? They're like,
Oh my God.
oh my God, it's so nice. And we try to replicate that by like drinking wine or smoking weed or taking pills or whatever it is. All that stuff does the job, but it's just a numbing agent. As soon as that dissipates, here you go, right back to the same, like, right? And so if you're not creating healthy ways to attune to your body, to help your body down regulate, you're always going to be a slave to all of these protectors and all these numbing agents that you use for the rest of your life, because it's the only reprieve that you're going to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. With the old red wine, I've just noticed the time. I always like to...
I can stay even if Ilan's got to go.
Oh, okay, that'd be cool. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Ilan, would you like to leave before you head off? Some pearls of wisdom before you go?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just thank you for having me on and us on. I'm a big believer that this work is where humanity is going. It's very much fringe and kind of like in the new agey in the same way that yoga was, 20 years ago. And people are like, you do yoga? You're weird. And now it's like the exact opposite. People are like, wait, you don't do yoga? What's wrong with you? Yeah. So I think in the next 10, 15, 20 years, like this will be the norm. Mindset work has been around for 60, let's say roughly years. Like it's just an old technology. I'm not saying it's not great. It's just an old technology. And so what I would offer people is, whether it's like tapping into meditations that we offer that are free, and I'm sure Mel can guide you guys to that. Yeah. Anything that you can do to go within and learn what is happening in the body, not in the mind. Like most of you guys have probably done like a lot of stuff to understand this. And that's a great piece, very necessary. My invitation is just now focus on what's happening like neck down. And if you learn that language in the same way that it took you time and effort to learn this language, right? Understand this. If you invest time to learn this language, you start to operate in life from a very different place. Like the flow of life becomes easier. The peace in your life, in your relationships. I was just on with yesterday, some woman, she has had a pinched nerve in her back for decades, like as long as she can remember, doing one of our meditations. And this whole thing is released. She's never felt anything like that released. She's like, is it possible that this emotional thing that I released actually released this? I was like, yes, that's how it all works, So yeah, that's the invitation. It's like, you're already doing awesome work. You add this, it's like jet fuel to an already blazed fire. So hopefully you guys can tap into that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for giving me your time. I know how busy you are.
I'll let Guy take it from here. You guys are in good hands.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Bye, guys.
Let me just put on my glasses real quick because if Ilan's leaving, I need to look more astute. I'm ready now.
Cool. There was one thing that Ilan said, and I thought it'd be nice to elaborate on that. He talked about, when you sit and the nervous systems co-regulate and it allows that part to dissipate or to not be as strong, or that doesn't just happen from one sitting, does it? How does that sort of come about?
So yes and no.
Okay.
Here's the reality. Like I'm sure from the outside, when people work with us, we seem like healers, energy healers, whatever you want to call it. But I know the truth, and it's that I'm actually not doing the healing. What I'm doing is I'm holding a certain level of consciousness within my own system that offers ground and support and attunement to the person that's with me. So it's not like I'm not doing anything, but it's very subtle what I'm doing. It's like I'm supporting their system energetically, if that makes any sense. Like at the level of physicality, like how would you support somebody? Maybe you would offer them a hug, a warm hand, hold my hand, right? Like, but if you think about it, like we're just particles vibrating. So even this act is really just energy meeting each other in a certain context. Yeah? Does that make sense? And there's certain contexts that we can meet each other that just comforts our bodies. right? Like somebody can hold you from behind and it can be very uncomfortable, or somebody can hold you from behind and you can lean into the support and feel like, oh, thank you, God, that you're there. So those, and that would say, look, same act, different attunement. Right? And would have a completely different response in the body. So the reason I say yes and no is because healing, and it took me a while to get this, seems to happen of its own accord and in its own timetable. Mostly when people do developmental work, they think, oh, I want to handle my money stuff. I'll go work with a money coach, or I want to handle that thing with my mom, and so I'll go work with a relational coach, or whatever it is. And they apply and I don't think there's anything wrong with having an intention to heal, but it's, in my opinion, impossible to have an agenda to heal. Your body doesn't care about your agenda. Just doesn't, right? Like, again, if I cut my finger, I could sit here and be like, heal finger. It does nothing about my finger. In fact, the stress that I'm creating probably slows down the healing process. In contrast, if I was to put my awareness on my hand, have no agenda, and I'm doing it as I say it. So for those of you guys who can read energy, you might feel it too. There starts to be actually a biological response in my finger. I can actually feel an increase of energy collecting there. That increase of energy will actually increase the blood flow to my finger. And that increase of blood flow will bring more nutrients to my finger, which inadvertently will heal my finger faster. But if I have an agenda to heal the finger will feel that. And it will feel it just like when you have an agenda with a child or your spouse. You're like, hey, honey, it would be really nice if, and it doesn't matter how nice you say, your spouse is like, what is this fucking bullshit, right? And their inner defenses just come up to meet it because something feels misattuned. This happens all the time, right? With every situation. So you got to get that the body is in its own rhythm and timing. And it's not just the body, because, okay, we are multidimensional beings. This is maybe sounds like a big concept, but it's not. You have a physical body, a mental body, an emotional body, an energetic body, a spiritual body. Let's just keep it at that. So we have 5 different layers that we can work with. And literally, if you attune to your body, you can feel your physical body. And if you just put awareness in your hand and you start digging your hand out, you'll notice that there's a line where you can actually start feeling the different textures of the field, right? So I won't go into all that because that's way too advanced here. But the point is that we're working with a lot of different things in people's systems. Now, when I sit with somebody, I'm not making anything happen. I'm just offering them this context of attunement and support through the fields. And then their body and their divine, quote, intelligence is doing all the work based on the timing that their body needs to have to safely go through that process. The moment I apply any of my desire, the body won't do that at all. It's like you cannot lie to your own body. You can lie to everybody else out there, but you can't lie to your body. And so weirdly enough, the more pressure or effort you try to put on yourself to heal, the less healing will take place. The more you relax into it and just know that the body's doing its thing in the timing it needs to do it, at the pacing it needs to do it, in the process that it needs to do it, and just let that unfold, that is your biggest opportunity for healing always. It's like, what's here now? Well, what's here now is I'm feeling sad. Great, let's notice the sadness. Well, then where is the sadness? It's in my heart. Where exactly? It's in the back of my heart. I can feel a contraction there. Interesting. Okay, let's sit with the contraction. I sit with the contraction. I'm noticing like a lot of anger and discomfort coming up. Great, let's notice that. And we just keep noticing through this support what's arising in the system. And that is literally watching the intelligence of the body go through its paces in its own timing. So I wish somebody could come to me and be like, I want to heal my mom stuff. I'd be like, great, let's look at mom. And look, we can certainly have an intention and then notice what we feel in our body as we think of mom. And that will also start unraveling a certain thing. And so to that degree, it's like, but whatever experience comes forward is not like, okay, we've taken care of everything about mom. It's that layer that was ready to come forward about the relationship to mom. And you may not even understand why you feel that way. It might be in total contradiction to how you think egotistically or mentally or your personality about it. Like you might just feel anger in your mind all the time about mom. But when we go into the body, it's like these rich textures of sadness and grief that you would normally not feel because you're thinking about mom, which is different than feeling or even having a sensation about mom in the body. And so for a lot of people, it's like this contradictory experience of how they think about it, but what they're really feeling inside. And that's kind of the reality is we have both the masculine and feminine energies within ecosystem and everybody. And so there are like hard emotions, like the anger that comes forward, which is really a defense, or like a sadness or a victimhood, which is really a defense to very soft, sensitive parts inside all our systems. And I think something we really get to get our head around is that there's nobody not sensitive on this planet. Every child is born as a sensitive human being. Though the people who seem insensitive or not sensitive are people who are the most heavily guarded and defended within their system. And so they literally, in order to survive in this world, have had to protect themselves to such a high degree that it seems that they don't feel anything at all. But underneath all that defense is the same mushy, chocolatey, sensitive child they always were. And that's the point, is we got to, these processes are about having an undefended heart, having an undefended system. And that might seem really scary to people in a world that's being projected as very harsh. However, here's what I would say: the gifts, the purpose, the energy, the inspiration, the abundance, the health, the relationships, everything that you're looking for is diminished by your incapacity or incapability to feel into your body. And if you want to explode as a spiritual being who's very influential, energetically, and powerful, you cannot do it with your defenses up. So you got to learn how to come back to your sensitivity in this world, because there's a whole sensory organ within you that you are not using. It's like walking through life with like both arms tied behind your back and say, well, I'll only go through this reality with my 5 senses. And the most powerful sense that you have is your awareness. And that's what everyone's muddled and is basically putting away because they're afraid of what that's going to feel like. But in my experience, we want to learn how to take our 5 senses and actually make them secondary or even tertiary experiences of this reality, because these are things that suck you into the matrix, that suck you into the illusion of what's actually going on. Your awareness is this like objective, powerful witness that has nothing but unconditional love and compassion all the time. And so you can either filter reality through the conditioning of your 5 senses and get stuck in all these parts and illusions and disempowerments and judgments of yourself and others and inner critics, or you could just develop this awareness that sits out here and be like, oh my God, and just feel your essence through that. Totally different way to live. Totally different way.
Yeah, I love that explanation. You're so good at explaining it all. And every time I hear either you or Ilan talking about it, I get something new, because it is hard to fully grasp it, and it reminds me of when The Secret first came out, and people are expecting money to drop out the sky if they did whatever. And it kind of feels a little bit like that, because you're like, well, the awareness is out there, and as long as we all relax, we're healed. But obviously it's not that simple, but it is that simple. We've just had decades and centuries of not being taught and told the right stuff, and we've got so far away from who we are. And what I was thinking of when you were talking was, so the episode I uploaded today was just me talking about what I've been through, and it was a really difficult episode to do. And what you were sharing then, in terms of people's, sorry, I've gone a bit emotional.
Take a moment with it, because right now is a good opportunity for people to experience the work through your experience. And I just want to say to everyone listening, like, notice the tendency when we get emotional to step over and keep talking and change the topic instead of being with our experience. Like, we can notice Mel right now and see how like it's beautiful that she can feel, even if it's pain. That's just this rich tapestry of being a human being. And I appreciate you letting it go a little bit so people can be with you. Ooh.
So what I was going to say was, you're talking about, the people that can't even, the people that are so defended, and seem like such the harsh people in the world, and I could relate to my ex in that, in as much as the way that he's defended himself, psychologically, emotionally, and everything else, from his childhood. And I always saw that, but it came at the detriment to me in the end. And it's such a shame that there are people out there like that will probably never, not in this lifetime anyway, maybe in another lifetime, but will never be able to experience this opening and this awareness. And the other thing I wanted to say was, because I've got the privilege of going through one of your programs right now and experiencing it, and when it showed up for me, and the trauma that happened for me, I knew fairly quickly, and with some guidance and support from you guys and the community, that this is showing up for my healing, because of my lack of self-love or self-worth, and I got that pretty quick. And so, you know, a lot of people that have done a bit like you and Ilan, that have done personal work and personal growth for many, many years, but like you say, you still come up against the same things, and you're like, shit, what's going on here? And that was where I was like, hang on, I've done this. I do love myself now. It's been a long road. But clearly, you know, there was still stuff to go. And that's what this work has highlighted, or is helping me deal with and heal me in a way that I've not had before.
Yeah. I think the reality is most people are trying to get rid of their ego or manage it in some way. I'm like, look, if you want to get rid of your ego, there's two paths to do that. You can either die or you can become enlightened. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, ego comes with the package. It's built into the machinery. And because we're egotistical machine, there is going to be suffering that you experience, and there's going to be challenges, and you're going to get hooked, because it doesn't matter how much work you've done. There are circumstances in your life that are going to surpass the limit. Like, or, you know, let's say you keep building a bigger and bigger container to hold life, but there is going to be a level of stress that comes into your life that's beyond what that container can hold. And the system goes to a level of stress or anxiety or fear that is still not fluid for you and brings you back into those parts. So it's not like we're ever getting rid of parts. We're actually becoming more intimate with them. So for me, it's like, don't make the ego an enemy. You want to be as highly compassionate as you can get with every part of yourself. But let's focus on the ego. It's like, how can I love myself so deeply when I'm feeling deprivation, when I'm feeling sadness, when I'm angry, when I'm judging myself, right? Because if judgment and agenda is like the brake pedal, it like slows you down in your development, compassion and forgiveness is the accelerator. And so, look, even with him, I'll just say it, with your former, I'll just say this. I don't know him well enough to assess anything about him, but people can surprise you. As much as that healing is for you as it's for him too. I think what you may have learned during this experience is that your boundaries are still rather porous. When your boundaries are porous, somebody has to come in to expose the porousness in your energetic field and do the thing to you so you can notice that it's porous, right? And that's the thing, like, we play these energetic games that are so autonomic and subconscious that we don't recognize how we're manipulating, it's a strong word, but manipulating the field, that another person has to come in and play that other persona. Like, if you're a victim, you need perpetrators to support your victim story and your victim energy. So when people meet you, they kind of, with their will or without it, fall into that role, and will either subtly do that, passively do that, or aggressively do that around you. And they will shift when you shift. When you get more stability and safety in your system and you come out of that, you'll see suddenly the perpetrators don't seem to be around anymore, right? It's like, so it's kind of both ways. And the one thing I'll just say is, like, again, people will surprise you. I can't tell you how many people I brought. Like, Ilan and I must have enrolled well over 1,000 people into landmark education programs. Okay. And for those that don't know, that's a lot. Like, it's a lot. And there were people I would bring to those to sit in the room and watch a presentation. And I'd be like, I don't even know why I brought this person. They're not paying attention. They don't seem engaged. They're just, I could just tell in their life, they're stubborn, blah, blah, blah. 9 times out of 10, when they go, who wants to register? That person's the first person out of their chair, walking to the back of the room, registering. And I'd be like, what is happening right now? And in our programs too, it's like the people who usually sign up and go L3 and do, advanced work with us for a year are, sometimes it's the people who participate a lot, but often it's the person who like sat in the background, didn't say a word the entire program. You couldn't even tell if they were engaged. And then like suddenly they're working with you for 15 straight months. And you're like, this person's incredible. So I think there's always room to understand that we're all on our spiritual path, whether we wanted to or not. The system seems to be a system of education, like this, if you want to call Earth a system, it seems to be a school for souls. And so we all came down here with the purpose to learn. And we're all learning in our own way, but oftentimes we make judgments about the way people are learning as if they're not learning the right way. And we don't quite understand the subtleties and how it is. But as far as I can tell, the system is like a washing machine that keeps bringing experiences into your life over and over again. Again, not to harm you, but to show you the truth and to constantly give you an opportunity to reveal deeper truth, right? Over and over again. And so for him, look, I don't know where his limiter is, but it may hit that limiter, or he may need something way more extreme to hit that limiter. But I think we all get to a point in our lives where something repeats so much, we're like, enough already.
Yeah.
And then we go, look. And I don't know where that for some people, that's terminal illness. Yes. Or, losing a loved one or whatever it is. I certainly don't want to be in those situations, but from a spiritual perspective, to me, that's what it looks like. It's like the universe can whisper at you, it can yell at you, or it can beat the shit out of you. You get to pick where you listen to it from. And I think that's part of the exercise in becoming more aware of subtlety in the field, is that you can pick up on those cues before they become gargantuan problems in your life. Because your body, through stress, we know, can create disease. That's a fact. So if you're experiencing massive amounts of stress, it doesn't mean that it's going to show up that way in your life, but it certainly could flourish into that. And personally, I'm grateful that I haven't had to learn lessons that way. The people around me don't have to learn lessons that way. And I don't think that people have to learn lessons that way, but the soul will bring the lessons into your life one way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that as well. That was lovely. Yeah. So I think, given the time, don't want to go on too much longer. I'd love to, and I'd love to get you guys back on at some point.
Sure.
But in terms of how to sort of finish this off, really, in terms of what you want to say, in terms of the work that you're doing and what you and your brother are doing with the company and how you're trying to impact the world, what do you want to say to round it up?
I wanna just tell people that, look, the tools are available to you. I don't know that Ilan and I are the right teachers, guides for everybody. But if you're listening to this and you feel down into your system and some part of you goes, yes, I would say get engaged, right? I've never seen anybody truly transform their life without intervening in some way, without routing resources towards investing in themselves, whether that's energy, time, finances, etc. Like, I think most people are living a very, very fantasy life about how it's all going to turn out. They think that they're going to like marry rich, or, win the lottery, or like some spontaneous event will happen. And while that could happen, chances are that's the exception and not the rule. And that might happen to 1% of people or 0.01% of people. Like, I wouldn't bet my life on that, by any stretch of the imagination. And for a lot of people, they think like having the circumstances all handled, like the money or whatever it is, makes it all work. It doesn't. Like, Ilan and I have coached tens of thousands of people. We've coached a guy who is nearly worth $1 billion. And I can tell you, the struggles are just the same, because the internal struggle has nothing to do with what's happening in your external world. And that's often the mistake that we make. And I think for the last few thousand years, we've been a very, very externally focused society, whether that's by design or whether there's cosmic forces or whether it's just humanity hiding wisdom from itself so that certain people can take power. I couldn't say. But what I do know is that when people come to their own awareness, and you can learn about that, and that's all Ilan and I do, we just point at awareness so you can notice the qualities of it and then bring yourself to it. The best teacher that you have is your own awareness and your own direct experience. And that's why Mel is saying, like, this stuff sounds esoteric, and it's even, I think what Ilan and I do well is we explain it well, but explaining it does nothing, literally zero, for increasing the quality of your life. These might all sound like great ideas to you. However, until you directly experience these things for yourself, you will not know them.
Yeah.
You will not. We could talk about riding a bike and what gaining balance feels like till we're blue in the face. I can teach you a 60-hour class on bike riding. You still cannot get on a bike and ride that bike. But the moment you get on that bike and you ride it and you feel that pedal and the wind and the balance and centrifugal forces working in your favor, you never unforget that. In fact, you could do that for the rest of your life after one experience. That's a direct experience. That's what transformation really is. And so like, if you're interested in healing yourself, even if it's a stretch, even if you feel like you don't have the resources for it, become resourceful. Find a way to invest in yourself. Find a way to become more self-realized. Find a way to liberate yourself, because the world that we all, I believe, want to see tomorrow is not a world that's guided by politicians and economics and all the things that we've seen for such a long time in wars. We're never going to get there. There's no peace coming from these systems. The peace comes from each of us doing the internal work, beginning to feel safety and well-being in our system, feeling compassionate towards ourselves. And then as you develop those things, the natural tendency is to view the world that way and see people that way. And this world is very, very, very hungry for integrity and compassion. Yeah. It is not a limited resources, but we act like it is. And if we give that to ourselves and then give it to each other, we're going to see an extremely different generation being raised. And that's, I think, something we really get to note over the last 150 years, watching different movements and like even Nazism or something like that. That was one generation. That was one generation of humans. We're extremely plastic. We're extremely moldable. We can change what's happening in this world within a 15, 20-year period like that, just by having a generation of people who are raised in a different timbre and a different energy. So we're not talking about something that needs to take thousands of years. But for that to happen, each of us needs to take responsibility for where we're at. And so you're certainly not at fault for the things that are going on in your life. But if you become aware that that's happening, then you certainly are responsible for taking action to correct those things and heal yourself. And that's what I think what we all got to do. We just got to take responsibility for our own inner world so that the external world can become a much, much more beautiful place to live in.
What a perfect place to finish. I wholeheartedly agree. So in terms of if people want to reach out to you and find out more, because you do live events, you've got coaching programs and you do free resources, you've got all sorts going on and coaching. So where's the best place for people to go?
Yeah, I would just say soulsandseekers.com is the easiest place to go. It'll get you into our community. It'll give you 28 days of active healing meditations that my brother and I do. And then if you want to have a conversation as you get into our flow, it'll be pretty clear how you can book a call. You might even end up talking to Mel. And that's the thing, like, we are talking about esoteric here, and it's not an easy thing to describe to people because they have no experience with it. Again, it's like try to explain gravity to somebody who has never been on a bicycle before, right? Like, you could talk about it, but at the end of the day, it is kind of a leap of faith. You got to listen to someone like me talking, and you got to look inside your own system and choose whether you think that what I'm saying is authentic and genuine and real. And if you truly believe that I can help you, then find a way to be resourceful enough to put yourself into the situation where you can do these programs. A single year investment with myself and my brother will change the rest of your life and probably the lives that come after that. We guarantee it. There's no way to do this work and not be deeply impacted by it. You got to pull out your own bullshit meter and figure out if what I'm saying is true or not, basically. And so at the end of the day, like, do the work, have a little taste of it, and then have a conversation about what it looks like to enroll and participate. And if it's your cup of tea, we will open up ourselves and our community to you with open arms, and really, really show you what life could look like in a very, very different way than most people experience it.
Yeah. And having been in your world, more immersed in your world in the last few months, and seeing the people in the community, and I've had lots of conversations now with people in the community, both people that are just there to be in the community and also people that want to go through the programs. And the people that experience your weekends, like you said, we just had one last weekend, the transformation that happens from a few hours for people that have never directly experienced what Guy's talking about is off the Richter scale. And that alone, there's a particular woman that came on the program this last weekend, and I knew damn well as soon as I'd got her on that weekend, she'd be hooked. I knew she would. She loves you anyway, but that she was always too busy. She's always this, she's always that. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm seeing happening right now. And that's just what happens. And I think I've probably done about 4 or 5 of these weekends now. And I remember the first weekend, there was such something massive happened 5 minutes after the event finished, for my higher good. Not that I was expecting it, but for my higher good. And these are the sorts of things that happen on these weekends. And yeah, and it takes a bit of practice to be able to feel that experience, because it does change, it does fluctuate, and then you're like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? You know, and there's all that effort, and let's forget about the effort. Let's just allow, you know.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. It's jaw-dropping for us too. It never gets old. Like, I don't know if that's a point of passion for us, or, you know, you don't do what Ilan and I have done for as long as we've done it. You don't go through the shit that we've gone through, the upsets, the almost making yourself broke. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times, like, the debt, the being broke, the having money stolen, the relationships that didn't work out, how many things we've gone through. If we really listed them, people would be like, you guys are insane. I agree totally with you about that in so many ways. And like, you don't do it because it's a money play. You do it because you love what it does for people. You love, and you see, like, I have 2 kids. I want a better world for tomorrow. I don't get to take money with me, but I get to leave my children here to hopefully make a better world for tomorrow. So I'm more dedicated now, you know, to that, and raising these children inside of this awareness too, because I'm fascinated. I'm like, what does it look like if children have this from day one? If they're attuned to, and I still misattune to my children, even with my awareness, but like, I know how to repair with them. I know how to attune to them. I can feel what's happening in the nervous system. Like, imagine being able to feel into your child. Like, these are things that were such radical ideas to me just a few years ago. And I'm like, you know, like, it doesn't get old. Like, this stuff just keeps getting better, because we are so deep. We're infinitely deep, these human beings. We are so beautiful. When you take away all this conditioning, it's ridiculous how gorgeous we really are. And so, like Mel said, it's just like just a little bit of this awareness for people, the novelty of it. Imagine living one way for 40 years, and then within a weekend you're like, wow, there's this whole other way to perceive reality. Like, I had no idea. It becomes wildly engaging, like finding your most favorite game you've ever played before, and it just turns out that you are that game. To look inside is just the most monumentous, exhilarating game you could ever play with yourself. And so it's exciting, it's novel, you know, it's all the things. And you know, if we get to be your guides, I would be honored to do that. So yeah, you guys take a look at what we have, and you get to make your own decisions about your own life.
Amazing. Thank you. That went on a bit long, didn't it, when I asked you to close out? But as I said, I could talk for another hour. But yes, thank you so much, Guy. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And I really know the listeners and the viewers are going to absolutely love this. Thank you.
Love you all. All the best to you.
Thank you.